So thank you so much for joining in and welcome everyone. My name is Sarah Skaversky. I am our Director of Strategic Learning here at Institute for the Future, and I am delighted to be joined by Heather Hughes and Allison Hoopert today to talk about where people come to think and dream, how the YMCA uses signals clubs to engage staff. As you come in, I think everybody's doing this, but please, as you are writing, make sure that you are sending your messages to everyone, not just the host and participants and panelists. We want to make sure that everyone's able to see where you're joining from and your wonderful questions and comments that you have. For questions and answers that you would like to throw in, please do that from our question and answer function. That's a way that we'll make sure that we're able to see your questions as they pop up, and we'll be able to ask those as we go through. Our schedule for today, our agenda, we're going to do a quick welcome to Institute for the Future, talk about a little bit about who we are for those of you who are first-time IFTF Foresight Talk people. Then we'll have our main show of what you all came here for, which is a conversation between myself and Heather and Allie. And then we have audience Q&A. And so really what we've built these Foresight Talks around is trying to engage you and everybody around the world in conversations about strategic foresight in a way that really helps you apply it to what you're doing within your own organizations, within your own community. So to do that, we want you to be as engaged as possible, asking those questions that you really want to ask. And we're going to get into that nitty-gritty of how does it work really to start a signals club? How does it work to engage your organization in strategic foresight? A little bit about Institute for the Future, who we are. We are a public interest organization. We are a nonprofit organization. We're an education and futures research organization. We're based in Silicon Valley and we're founded in 1968. So we've been around for quite a while here at Institute for the Future. Really, what we want to do and what every action that we take at Institute for the Future is towards helping organizations and leaders become more future ready, really being able to engage themselves and their communities in conversations to make the world more future focused, to really combat short-termism. And we do that through a number of different means. We have tools, research, and we have lots of different programs that help people take what's happening around us today, turn it into foresight, some visions about possible alternative futures, to gain insight about what does it mean for myself today so we can move on to take action. So that's a little bit about who we are. We have three main branches of what we do at Institute for the Future. One being IFTF Advisory Services, which is where we do projects with organizations that are customized to look into an area of inquiry that they're really looking forward at. So looking at the future of your industry. We have partnership programs, which is our IFTF Vantage program, which YUSA is part of future-facing organizations wanting to come together and get the tools and community to really continue to lead the way in their industry. And then we have IFTF Foresight Essentials trainings, which is where we teach those tools and methodologies of foresight to organizations. We have a bunch of trainings coming up. We actually have one next week that has, I think, maybe 2 seats, maybe 1 seat left if you would like to join us in San Francisco, California. It's a 3-day training. We also do live online trainings. So Foresight Essentials, which is really covering the whole baseline of how do you start a futures practice? How do you enhance your futures practice if you're somebody who's already in practice? We have trainings also for people in the philanthropy space specifically. We have Foresight for Beginners, even one coming up on December 10th. So if you or somebody that you think would be really a great candidate to just get to know Foresight a little bit more, you can do that. It's quick, 2 hour gathering, or an hour and a half, and Three Horizons of AI if you're interested in artificial intelligence. And trying to understand what is happening and changing in that space now, in the midterm, and in 5 to 10 years. It's a great course to explore all of those different sides. So lots going on at Institute for the Future. Annette, we do not currently have a training planned in Germany right now. I know we've done a couple of those the past few years, but if there's demand, we will go there. So let's keep in contact and continue that conversation. But speaking of conversations, let's have a wonderful conversation. I'm really excited to welcome to the quote unquote stage Heather Hughes and Allison, or Allie, Hooper. Um, Heather is the Senior VP of Strategic Alignment at YMCA of the USA, or YUSA. And Allie is the Director of Strategy and Quality Practices for Innovation at YMCA of the USA, YUSA, as they call it. Both of them have two rambunctious dogs. We were talking about which parts of their bios we should bring in. So both of them have two rambunctious dogs and have really been leading at the Y through different levels over the past, many years, decades of really committing to this organization. So welcome to the stage. I am delighted to be in conversation with you. And what we're doing today is really having our conversation. And Aisha, you can actually stop sharing the thank you. We invited you here today because you've been doing some amazing things at YUSA, specifically with what we call Signals Clubs. And before we even get into Signals Clubs, we want to get into like all of the little bits and pieces about thinking about how people can get into this. But first of all, just why Foresight? Can you tell me about first of all, what's YUSA versus YMCA? And then and then why Foresight, and what has been your Foresight journey so far?
Yeah, I can start. YUSA is the National Resource Office for all the YMCA's in the United States. And so we work with every Y to support them with what we call service delivery. We work to protect our brand. We deliver services and facilitate innovation. And we keep certification and membership standards, which is, more like a governance part of our job. And so we promote and protect the Y brand at YUSA and help Ys to do the best job that they can do in their communities.
That's great. And
Um,
yeah, so Foresight, how does this
so
come into like
how did this
governance
happen?
applies and standards and yeah.
Yes. So I would, in previous strategic plans, we had used, we had definitely worked with Bob. So, Bob, I'm glad to see you on today. And we did a 10-year forecast, and we used a customized 10-year forecast for a strategic plan that we had right before COVID, which really didn't get off the ground because then there was COVID. And then in I think what a lot of organizations had to do, their next strategic plan was really focused on bouncing back from COVID. But we were determined in our current strategic plan to be thinking about the future, because it was, there's the reality and then that we had to face, but a disappointment that we really couldn't be super visionary right that second. So we had an objective have an objective in our current strategic plan to develop a bold shared vision for the future. And so we worked with Institute for the Future to help us to pull forecasts together. And we did things called signal swarms, which we had gone to Foresight Essentials trainings and knew what a signal was, but when we really started to work with Sarah and Wayne and others that helped us on this journey, we learned a lot about signals. And what caught for me was that the signals gave us a chance to do something that's maybe somewhat unique in a wise strategic plan, is that you have to engage with your community when you make a strategic plan. So a local Y, when they're doing a strategic plan, they do a lot of community engagement because they're there to serve the community. Our community at YUSA are Ys. That's our community. And
Mm.
so signals seem to me to be a way that Ys could engage in an interesting way to help us think about the future from their perspective at Ys. And honestly, we did just start it at YUSA because I thought I need to get staff at YUSA involved too. Like everybody, just so you know, everybody at the Y wants to be involved in the strategic plan. That's like a given. So yeah, I had to think of all different ways to engage people. And
Mm.
this seemed like an interesting way to do it. And we started with YUSA people. And Allie and I did this together. And I think I'll let Allie talk a little bit about how she started, what started for me as a tool in strategic planning to help us to think about the future, but also engage our community. Allie really kind of took it one more step further and started pulling Ys into these conversations. So we really have a mixed group of
Mm.
people thinking about signals all the time. So Allie, do you want to talk a little bit more about that? And
Yeah, think
Allie, do you mind
oh,
if I ask you also to maybe explain, because I know signals are a really core concept when thinking about foresight, and then it also takes a little bit for people to grasp on to like what a signal is. I'm sort of curious how each of us would describe signals of change before we talk about how we got into this thing. So, would you mind sharing a little how you describe signals to folks that are coming in?
sure. When we bring people into Signals Club, we want to give them a background and understanding. And when we talk about signals, we talk about them as being those obscure, tangible things happening somewhere that aren't in our face yet, but have potential to be. And they um, make us think or feel that something could be different about the way we live, work, or play today in the future. And it's really looking to the horizon and seeing what's out there and picking up on those tangible, obscure things that really make us feel something. And so
Mm,
that's how we describe signals for anybody who wants to join our club. And we talk about that at the start of every single club meeting.
nice.
Yeah, so to build off of that timeline that Heather talked about, that we really initiated and partnered with IFTF, I think it was spring of 23, around the strategic plan. And as Heather noted, part of that work was searching for signals and putting a forecast together specifically for the next YUSA strategic plan. And what we found, we did that through that summer then. And by August of 23, what we found was that those staff that were attending, like they were into it. They were having fun. This was exciting. People wanted to come to this call. And we thought, wow, we should have more people. We need to keep doing this because people enjoy it. And at this point, we were having weekly calls. So every Tuesday at 1 o'clock Central, we had regulars who were coming to join this call. Heather and I were leading them along with several of our other staff at YUSA who've also been part of Foresight Essentials. Um, and it was going well. We thought, well, what if we bring more folks in? So we started inviting Y leaders from local Ys across the country and slowly bringing them in. And as we were adding people to the club, we recognized we need to do some kind of intro with them so that it wasn't just dropping into a club that they really didn't know anything about. And so we started doing one-on-one conversations as a welcome grounding for folks to bring them into the club. And that was going very, very well. And fast forward through 23 into this year, we really formalized, because of Signals Club, because of what we were hearing from the participants, how valuable those conversations were to them and the value that they were seeing to their roles at their local Ys and also YUSA. We recognized that we formalized, I should say, strategic foresight as an organizational leading practice in the areas of strategic planning, in the areas of innovation. And so when we talk about strategic planning and innovation at a national level to support our local Ys in those efforts, strategic foresight is a leading practice in those spaces. We've formalized that. And from there, we've began putting up more formal structures around our Signals Club to ensure its sustainability. And so I can expound on that a little bit more, but once we opened it up to our local Y leaders, we started having more and more people drop in, and we still host the calls. It's every single week, every single Tuesday. It is a drop-in club. People come in when they can. And we welcome them whenever folks can make it. I think we've got 200 some folks now who are on the list that have raised their hand and said, we want to be part of Signals Club. Not all 200 come every Tuesday, but.
Okay. So I am a person that is attending Signals Club. I sign on to this call Tuesday, 1 p.m. Central Time. What am I walking into or virtually beaming into? What does it look like? What's happening in this?
So I think one of the things that would be our bit of advice is that it's super casual. And because what we figured out was while Allie and I were in the back making formal structures, the appearance of Signals Club is loose, fun, dreamy. But like sometimes of course we talk about some heavy topics sometimes, but it's a very we try to make it a really safe space, and we're super casual in it as well. And so because it takes something like a big word like strategic foresight and makes it like kind of accessible to everybody, right? They're really doing some high level thinking with these signals, but we have fun and we have everybody bring signals. And if we don't have enough signals, I always say that too. And be careful when you say Signals Club. Sometimes people think I say Singles Club, and I'm like, no, that's not what we're doing. But we'll have people bring signals, but if they don't, Allie and I have signals in our back pocket all the time, and we'll bring those. But it's kind of like a no judgment zone, right? Like people come in, you have a signal, and sometimes they're not a signal. And then we kind of let the conversation go, and we say, oh, but by the way, that was a great conversation, really great thoughts. Just to let you know, that might not have been a perfect signal. And so we just make it easy. I think that's like the best word I can think of, is that when somebody comes in, I hope they feel like it's easy and they're not stressed out at all about joining the call.
Yeah, and Sarah, what I might add too, so just to give a little bit of context to, if you come to Signals Club with us, you're all welcome next Tuesday if you would like. If you want to join the call for a hot minute, we would open up at the top of the hour with a welcome. We'd ask people to introduce themselves in the chat, because sometimes we have so many folks on that we can't actually go around. And if we have new folks, we want to feel welcomed. We ground ourselves in we have about a 3-minute grounding at the top of every call. Here's what a signal is. We're here today to set aside all of our daily tasks and really think about the future and what that might mean and the implications of the signals that we're talking about. So we do that grounding. We talk about the questions that we use to think about signals through. We put those questions in the chat, and then we say, who brought a signal? Who would like to share? And so it's an open conversation from that point on who would like, if anybody brought a signal, and if they would like to share it and get us kicked off. We do ask folks to put their signals in the chat so that everybody can see them. We use Teams for our calls, Microsoft Teams for our calls. So folks drop their signals into the chats. And we've also learned over the last year and a half that as part of that grounding, in an effort to ensure that we're hearing everyone's voice and ensuring that everyone has a chance to speak, we do like to ask everyone to contribute a thought to every signal. They can either do that coming on or off mute, or they can use the chat. But we do like to ask folks to contribute to the conversation in any way that they feel comfortable doing so, just so that we can ensure we're getting that diversity of thought with every signal that's presented.
Sarah, do you want us to address some of the questions in the chat?
Yeah, I know. This is one of the most sort of question-filled already
Oh, good.
things. Clearly, people are excited about this concept and bringing this in. Let's keep going with our conversation. And yeah, I mean, there are questions about sort of what do we do with the signals that are collected, and what are the types of conversations that are coming out of this? Is this something? I mean, I think Ali, one of my favorite things that you do, having been to several of these signals clubs, is also saying, you're saying set aside everything else that you're doing, but it's also something that you say about this is going to be the one meeting this week. Can you finish that sentence?
Yeah, so part of that grounding is like this is the one meeting this week where you will not leave with anything to do. There's no accountability to any task that you have. It is a hour per week that we just come and think together collectively as a team about what's possible. And that practice alone, th- there is a lot of power in practicing that one thing, collective thinking.
And do you have an example of a conversation that has come up or like a signal that has really sparked something for you all as you've been going through this process?
I think the thing that we found, and this is a very hot, wide topic too, but just for everybody, staffing. And so we got so many signals about the future of work that people were bringing in
Mm,
that we decided to well, I guess this summer, just the recent last summer, we said we're going to do a summer sprint around the future of work. And
mm,
it was a little bumbly at times. Like Allie and I were figuring it out as we went, but we collected. So there's a question about the signals collection. We use the
mhm,
Vantage site, and we have a board where we collect the Y signals, and we mark them in certain ways that we would understand, like by practice, what we call practices. So is it aquatics? Is it work? Is it whatever? And so we use a signals board, and we found all the most interesting future of work signals that we could. And we walked everybody through this. We took a break from signals in the summer, and we walked everyone through how to do a forecast using the signals.
mm,
So we were trying to also show signals are not just for, yes, there is something you can do with them, right? So there isn't
mm,
something you have to do at the end of that meeting, but if you collect enough of them, there is something to do with them, and you can create a forecast. So we did create a forecast related to the future of work based on the signals that we had. And that is a topic that is near and dear to why people, because we just have a lot of staff in general, and staffing's always an issue. And things would come up like providing housing for staff, and
mm,
that a Y could actually imagine. Like that wasn't actually so far off for them. They could see how maybe if they have residences, and many do, that it could be a place where staff lived. So signals for them in that case started to become a lot more real, because they had to be pretty inventive about how they were retaining staff. So I think that is that I think that just goes to the collection question and what we
mm,
might do with them. I mean, I think Allie and I both have our favorite signals. Like the signals that gross people out the most are the food signals. Like those are always fun. And then I always think that, like, I think we have gotten over fear of AI by seeing like different signals of AI that are not scary. But there was a point in time when AI came up on every single call, and we kept saying AI is already here. It's not a signal, but you might see something that is a different way to use it. But so anyway, those are the conversations that stick out to me. 3D food and creating food from food cells are the ones that I thought had the most fun reaction from people. So I don't know, Al, you probably have some favorites too.
No, I think, there's been a lot of signals that we've talked about. I think one of the most interesting things that we've learned over the last year and a half is that whether or not the signal is directly related to the why, as we talk about the signal and we think about its implications, I'm going into some of our foresight essential activities, but we think about the implications of it, we actually eventually can find a connect to the way that it would impact the why. And so helping everybody who attends our signals calls see that, while seemingly this one signal in and of itself might not directly impact the why, the actual implications of it, had if it were to become the norm, to understand those implications. That's been, I think, one of our learnings in for all of us who have been attending our signals club over the last year and a half.
One conversation I think I remember, one signal was when like Martha Stewart was on the cover of like the swimsuit edition or something,
Yes.
or like of Sports Illustrated. And it really was a fascinating conversation about aging, how we think about, that and the why and how you support this culture of aging or how that's changing. And so lots of things that, you would say, oh, this is like sort of a fun or a different or maybe not directly related, but definitely thinking about our society and how the whys can support that.
Mhm.
Um, I wanted to get to a question that Martin Davis had asked about sort of the domain map. Is there an area of focus? And you sort of got to this where you had set aside and you did a work focus, but is there a topic of focus that you do at each meeting, or is it just sort of open range and people can go for whatever they're interested in?
So thus far, we have left it open with it outside of last summer when we did our intentional forecasting around the future of work. We keep the signal calls open for the purpose of allowing folks to find any signals. In this time where we've been building our skill, we felt that it'd be important for anyone to bring any signal without trying to narrow that scope while we were learning and growing together in this space. So to date, we have left it open to any signal. And what we've found now, because our group has grown and progressed so much, is that one person brings a signal, we might actually talk about that one signal for the full hour. Like yesterday on our call, like the whole call, we talked about one signal because we started drawing in other signals that we've talked about before, and we understand how, like, we can start to have conversations about how they build. So we leave those open outside of when we're going to intentionally, like Heather had talked about, when we intentionally did our forecast around the future of work. Moving into 25, I know there was a question about some of the formal structures. One of the things that we're going to build into our Signals Club in 25 is practicing the use of more foresight and insight activities. And so we'll tailor those a little bit more. But in general, if it's just a drop-in standard signals day, the signals are open to any topic, any sector.
And I think that's one of the things that I found was particularly successful about yours. I know that some signals clubs, it's, when you constrain it more, it feels like, and also when there are so few people, or mandate that everybody needs to come in with a signal every time. I think it feels like more pressure, or people don't come because they feel like they don't have a good enough signal. And so then you lose that group of that conversation that you have. And I think the idea of you all as leaders always having that signal in the back pocket of being ready to like have something if nobody else has come with anything has been a really nice thing as well. One pause I wanted to, oh, go ahead, Heather.
Sarah, I was just going to say, like, one thing that I've just learned over time, and I learned in the Foresight Essentials class, just through doing that, like, we had picked climate change, like, as our area of focus, but what we found, or I found for sure anyway, was the signals sometimes they're not what you think they're a signal of. And
Mm,
so leaving it open lets you take a signal that you might think is about work, but actually turns out to be about agriculture or something, right? Like
mm,
there's so the other reason why we like to leave it open is because can have a tendency to silo things here, to say, oh, it's youth or it's health or it's social responsibility, but we also want to kind of build that muscle that things can live in lots of places no matter what it is. So it may actually turn into a common domain, but we don't start it out that way.
mm. Okay, so we have this 200 people on this list right now. Who are these people? Who is attending Signals Club? Who makes a good Signals Club attendee? And how do they find you? How do you find them? Talk about who's involved.
Yeah,
Yeah,
so
go ahead, Allie. I'm going to talk about my favorite Signals Club members, but Allie is like very good at getting the people. So Allie should answer that.
It is everyone. We have YUSA staff from every department who attend. We've got local Y CEOs. We've got CFOs and C-suite members. We've got program directors. We've got, so individuals who are overseeing aquatics at WISE or sports at WISE around the country. We have a good cross section from the country all over the place. So it's a really good cross section of from location around the country as well as level within the organization. I would say predominantly we're talking about full-time staff at the local level and at YUSA. But that's kind of the who and how do they find us. So this goes back to one of the questions in the chat was about some of those formalized structures. We've learned we've learned this over the last year and a half, that we need a better entry point of bringing folks in. And so that one of the structures that we put in place, we've been testing the last 5 months, is what we call a strategic foresight learning cohort. And it is the entry point into our National Signals Club, that moving
Mm,
into 25. So any Y leader who is interested in strategic foresight and also the National Signals Club, they would come to a learning cohort, which is just 2 sessions. We talk about strategic foresight. And in those 2 sessions, we build our understanding of signals. We do a lot of the prepare activities from Foresight Essentials, including signals. And then we practice signals in those sessions so that they then get the invite to National Signals Club. And when they come to National Signals Club, they're prepared then to jump right into the
mm.
conversation because they've had that practice. And so that's one of the formal structures that we've started to put in place and to build, but that's the entry point into National Signals Club, or one of the entry points into our National Signals Club.
That's great. And yeah, Heather, I'm curious to hear who your favorites
Well,
are and if they're on the call.
I know, I love all the people that you wouldn't expect to, like, they have, like, our legal team has joined Signals Club, and you would think, okay, they're always kind of like the straight-laced folks. Like, they have some of the most interesting signals and insights. And we have someone that is like a treasured person at our Y that is always like helping people. And like she comes with like the most interesting signals all the time. So like what I love about it too is that it takes folks from different types of jobs and allows them to be themselves instead of their job inside of a place that is about work. But no one, like, I do remember a couple times we'd be like, uh-oh, we got the legal team on, what are they going to say? But like it wasn't a big deal, right? Like it just was. Now it's just, I'm not going to say his name, but like Joe, right? Like it's just that person on. And so that's like my favorite, is when you see people really get into it that you may not have always expected, which is a good, like, just general people lesson too.
So how did the legal team, for example, hear about Signals Club? Like how do people hear about it and get into this pipeline?
We would just go on staff calls and say, hey, anybody want to come to the Signals Club? I mean, when we, for like the really great process Allie just talked about, has just only started. We used to just go on places and say, hey, does anybody want to be on the Signals Club? So we just went on staff calls and talked to friends and, made our coworkers that we worked with all the time come. And so, and then when they found out when it was fun, they stayed.
I,
Nice.
yeah, if I could just add to that, because I think this is a really important point. Like when we started, it truly was come join us. It was just a verbal invite from
Mhm.
Heather and I, nothing formal, very low key. Come join us for this opportunity to think. And that's how we built the base. I don't know that if we had started with some of the more formal structures that we have now, that I think having that informal base helped us get to this point of being able to put together
Mm.
some more formal structures. I think that's what I'm saying. Like it really was not like we don't knock on doors anymore, but giving someone a call and be like, come to Tuesdays. It's fun.
Yeah. It was a
Yeah.
sales job also. We had to do a little bit of it.
And then I think it was great. So I just want to go back to a point that you made when people are saying sort of how do you collect these things? And you said we use the Vantage platform, just a little bit about that. So this is for the IFTF Vantage partnership for organizations that are part of it. They gain access to a signals platform where you can add signals, you can track them just all on your own. You can also go through ones that Institute for the Future staff or other people from other organizations have been adding on. And so I think having that is almost like a backup plan as well of saying like, I didn't find something, but like finding something interesting on the platform that has been added by somebody else that you're then able to
Yes.
go in, I think is a helpful thing. And I think that people, whatever platform you use, just finding something that works for you. Oftentimes it's systems that, you know, maybe it's the chat that you have in your Microsoft
Yes.
Teams and that's what you're doing. I don't know how it's working these days and how you're tracking
Yeah, we
much.
we still use the board a lot, and then the chat, yes, like we'll go back and find some things in the chat if we missed them. So yeah, you can, I mean, we love Vantage. I just want to say that. So that's it is a great tool. But like you could do this, you could collect it in Excel or
Yep.
whatever. You can bookmark pages. There's lots of ways to collect it.
So what has, as you've gone through this, how have you changed thinking about strategy or at all, if at all? I know you were thinking about the big, bold, strategic plan, and how has this contributed to this, or is it connected to this, or have you connected signals to that in this way?
Yeah, for sure. So when we were working together, Sarah, we had come up with the three forecasts, and one of them was around mental health, and that was really the forecast that resonated with a lot of the whys and people felt called to and felt like we could be in that space. But I hesitate to say, like, we're really just responding to that, like, that is probably where our strategic vision is going around social connectedness at,
Mm.
and how and the whys being a way for people to connect socially to combat loneliness, and people feel strongly about that. So I don't think we are at the point yet where we are looking 10 years in the future and saying, yeah, this is where we're going to go. We're still kind of in a responsive mode, but I think that is where we want to go, is that these signals that we're seeing, like wouldn't it be interesting if we collected enough signals about the future of work that it actually changed our training system, right? I don't think we're quite there yet, but that is what we would want. So we have used forecasts absolutely in our next strategic plan that did signals turned into forecasts absolutely did inform our next strategic plan, but I'm not sure it was like a 10-year thing. We were really being
Mm.
responsive to trends that were with us now and signals that could be interesting for us in a strategic plan. So I can't say with, real honesty that like, oh, we're
Yeah.
using signals to really think 10 years out. but I think we're building the muscle towards that.
Yeah, I think what I appreciate about what you all said is that sort of, right now it's this skill building, right? You're building up this muscle, the skill as you're going through, and then it seems like you're shifting towards a new phase where you're putting in new systems. And do you want to talk about where are you thinking about where this is heading? Either Signals Club or Foresight at the Y, as you're now have this sort of base of people that are starting to have this literacy of thinking about the future.
Yeah, I'll start on this one. I think as we think about this, and Heather and I were actually just talking about this morning, I think the big vision, the end goal is that all local Ys are using foresight, strategic foresight to guide innovation and strategy so that they're supporting their communities with foresight guided innovation and strategy. And so we do have to build that skill and equip to be able to do that. And so backtrack to where we are today, that's why we're putting some of these structures in place so that we can get to that ultimate end goal. And we know that it's going to take baby steps to get there. And so we don't know the full path yet, but we're starting to pave it. And so I think, as we look into 25, we're ready to take that next step with our Signals Club, meaning we've got our strategic foresight learning cohort. So we now got an entry point into our National Signals Club. And we'd like to, and what we plan to do in 25 is to be more intentional during Signals Club so that once a month we're doing foresight activities, we're doing insight activities, we're helping our participants learn how to make meaning of the signals. We'll create more forecasts together. We'll do different activities so that we're building their skills, taking that next step of if we're bringing all these signals, now what? And so we'll use our National Signals Club time once a month to focus on that. So we're slowly starting to build that skill. And something that we've been testing this last fall, because we know we're only going to capture so many people every Tuesday in order to go breadth and depth, right? To get deeper across our organization, we're going to need more people and more help. And so something that we've tested this last fall is looking at regional or localized signals sprints where we take individuals who have been attending Signals Club, they feel comfortable, they have an understanding. Heather and I work with them, but they'll take this back to their own region or their local Y and draw in people from more people from just that one Y or that one region to engage in an 8 to 10 week signal sprint. So the first week of that 8 to 10 weeks would be the learning cohort information. And then they, in that small group then, would practice signals during that sprint. And at the end of that sprint, then they're invited to the National Signals Club. So we're creating this loop where the National Signals Club is the always ongoing. And to get deeper into the organization, we can use these more localized and regional sprints. And so we've had several Ys this last fall test that concept, and it went well. And so we're going to continue to build off of that into 25. So I say all of that just to note that it's baby steps, but we're continuing to build the skill so that we can get to that ultimate end goal.
Yeah.
Yeah, Sarah, like the Y is going to be 175 years old in America in 2026. So we're all very excited about that. And so a generation of people have taught Ys community engagement skills and group work over probably a 20-year period so that a Y now would not, like if you say group work to a Y person, they know what to do. Or if they understand that part of working at the Y must be community engagement, but was a generation of people that taught that skill to others. And so what we want to eventually do is to make this as intuitive as group work or community engagement, that of course we're using strategic foresight. Of course we're the Y, we use strategic foresight. And so that really is like when Allie and I, are retired people, like hopefully, people would say, oh yeah, of course we're using strategic foresight like that. We want to work ourselves out of having to do this and not needing the systems and structures because it is just a part of how we show up. And
Yeah.
so that really is the vision. And I'm seeing like some of the questions around trainings and things like that. Like there's a few of us that have definitely gone to the Foresight Essentials, and there's a lot of value in that. But there is, I will say, like once you take that course, like you can use the materials, and we do. Don't worry, we attribute it to you, but we do use those, and like we lower the barrier to entry in everything we told you today. Allie and I do it ourselves. We don't, it doesn't cost us any money except our time, and there's no entry fee to get in. So like you can take one investment and a couple people go into a foresights class and turn it into something bigger if you're just willing to make it easily accessible.
So it seems like this is incredible. You've built up this, beautiful community and system. And I love the idea of playing the long game within, of playing the long game for the long game. Um, but have you had any challenges as you've gone along this path? Has it been, or have you just sort of, it's been easy? I know you have this sort of loose, let's go with it, but I imagine there might have been some bumps along the road.
Yeah, I think, it's good to have a partner because, there's going to be a Tuesday here or there that Allie or I are like, like signals call again. And so like I do think it's good to have a partner. And I think one of the challenges that we have had is just like we get into lulls, right? Like we'll go through a period of time where people are bringing lots of signals and it's really active, and then we get into another period of time where no one's bringing any signals, and so then we have to like step up, telling everybody time to bring signals, everyone, or we start to think about how do we get everyone to bring a signal. So like I think the hard part is it doesn't go away. You can't really take a break from it. Like even if you're feeling like, man, last week was a tough slog, it doesn't really matter. You have to show up the next week with some signals to keep it going. And so, I mean, that's just me. I mean, Allie might feel differently, but there are some weeks that I'm like, I'm not sure I can facilitate this once more. But then you do, and then it's a great call, and then you keep going, and it's fine.
Yeah, Sarah, I'd like to say that it's all unicorn and rainbows. Um, but I think one of the interesting things that we've learned or have had to try to convey is that there's always, especially when you're first starting, there's always the question of, well, now what? We've talked about a signal, now what do I do? And there's like this desire to immediately react and do something. And so one of the things that Heather and I have been very intentional about is to call to this foresight cycle and really talk about like it's foresight, and we have to think to draw out insight so that can inform action. And when we're talking about signals, we're not at action yet. And so really grounding in this cycle to help everyone understand that, signals aren't necessarily something that we're going to do anything with as it is. But when we think about and put it in the context with other signals to form those plausible views of the future, to form those forecasts, we can then make sense of that to inform actions. And so I think that is, I don't know that it's a barrier. I do think that though we've learned that we have to be very intentional about helping everyone understand that. So we're not always thinking that we have to act with every single signal that is.
Thank you. And I'm seeing a question from Kelly Ellens, who's a phenomenal champion of and runner of Signals Clubs herself. who's with credit unions and really has written blog posts for us about signals clubs and things like that. And I think she does that at different cadence as well. Um, so the question here is, has there been any pushback on the time employees are spending? An hour a week is a really big ask. Or does the Y see it as development and the shift to strategic foresight as part of your culture inherently sort of worth it? So curious to
Yeah.
hear
I wish it
how you
was the
feel about that.
latter, but I think there's a couple things. One, it doesn't have to be. It's only an hour a week for Allie and me. Like, everybody else can drop in and out, and that does happen, right? Like, we were just talking about somebody that we missed, that came every week, and then she hasn't been on in a while, and I'm going to meet with her in a week, and I'm just going to see what's going on. Like, it. People do have all the time emergencies at Wise, and like, I can't be on Signals Club. That's not my priority today. That's totally fine. So the only people we impose the hour a week on is really Allie and me. Everybody else can come in and out as they can. And if they can't make it that week, it's total, we're not taking attendance.
No, we don't take attendance, and we tell everybody, make it when you can make it. We've got some folks where once a month that works, twice a month, maybe it's every other month. We're perfectly fine with that. And Sarah, I think part of that question too is understanding that as we're talking with our local Ys, as we've built up our learning cohorts and in some of the work that we've been doing around making strategic foresight a leading practice in the areas of strategic planning and innovation, it's building that understanding that it is a skill that needs to be developed. And when talking with leaders, there's an acknowledgement that that is a development piece for any leader of any level at any one of our Ys. And so I personally haven't, I don't know if Heather has heard any pushback, because there's acknowledgement that this is a skill that just as a national organization that we need to develop in our leaders anyway. And then couple that with it, the National Signals Club is completely drop-in. You can choose to come when you want. Nobody is taking attendance. You're never going to get kicked out. Once you come to National Club, you're always a member. So I haven't heard any like pushback, I guess.
Anybody can get in, and you can never really get out.
Okay, so I know there are a lot of people on here who are thinking about, maybe starting their own signals clubs. Do you have advice for those people about how they should go about it, or just things that you've learned on your journey?
I think, yeah, having fun is part of it. I
Yeah.
think, like, if you you know, we happen to work in a place where Ellie and I have a freedom to do some of this, right? Like, that's a good thing. But if you didn't, or you were kind of like, well, I don't know if anybody really will know what this is, grab 5 buddies or 2 buddies and just start it, and like, practice yourselves doing it, and then invite 1 or 2 more people. That would be my main advice, because certainly Allie and I weren't perfect at it when we first started, but it was better because we did just start with people that we knew and that we could practice with. And if we didn't get the signal right, it was okay. We figured it out. So I think that would be my best advice, is to start with people you feel really comfortable with, and then invite people slowly as it gets some steam, or you get some steam in it.
Yeah, I second that. And I would say, keep it casual. I think one of the things that Heather and I have both said from the beginning is we actually have no real rules other than we talk about signals, and that's what the time is. So we're not going to keep attendance for anyone. We're not going to require people to bring signals. We're going to keep it as low barrier to entry so that everyone feels welcomed and is able to absorb and eventually contribute when they're ready and they feel comfortable, and that it's safe for them to contribute. And so yeah, on top of what Heather said, start small and learn alongside the folks, have fun, and keep it as informal as possible, at least to get started.
That's great. Well, thank you so much to both of you. It's been really a pleasure getting to work with you over the years and now to have this
Same.
conversation a little bit more publicly about the amazing work that you've done to take what started as, a custom forecast with Bob Johansson that then morphed into the work that we were doing for, the strategic plan, coming up with the three different forecasts, getting people really around the world and around the why to react to it, and then bringing that forward into signals clubs that have really outlasted, you know, all of the work that we did. It's been, just continuing and going and flowing, and so it's been a pleasure to watch that grow. And as Amanda just said, a great roadmap for starting our own groups. So thank you so much for that. Please join me in thanking Allie and Heather. And I just want to, before everybody heads off, share quickly our next, for those of you who are interested in our foresight talks. Our next foresight talk is about surfacing future possibilities for educators. I'm very excited about this. I will also be leading this one with Catherine Prince, who's the Senior Vice President of Strategic Alignment at KnowledgeWorks, looking at sort of education, K-12 education and futures, and how did they do their, really robust futures practice, how they've used it to put together reports and projects, and thinking about how educators will be deep diving into some of their pieces into that. So thank you, everybody, for joining us. I agree with all of the enthusiasm in the chat. It was really wonderful for me. So thank you, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you, everyone.
Yeah.